related to Azure. I develop things related to .NET and very early stuff which comes. They make something and then we test it out and see whether it is, according to the specs. That is my kind of job. And then let's talk about something more relevant to this topic. So I will just drag my email address ahead away from this page. Now the thing which we are here for, that is, let's grab this presentation over here. Let me just show you this. We are here for this Azure function topic. Now I'm just gonna share a repository with you guys, which I have been trying to maintain as far as I am doing these sessions like GAD 786 / Azure functions. I will share this in the chat uh, if I can access that. Where is chat? Okay. This Zoom thing is new for me. I don't know. I'll just share it with Pratik and hope that he will share it with you guys. So this is a repo where I have a function which we are going to build in this session, and this is right here in this sample Azure functions. The code for it is in this file getcode.js. This is very simple way. This is a very simple file, and we are not doing anything fancy over here. But the concept which we are going to talk about is a little bit new, and you might not know about it, or you might know about it. So it's not very hard, but it is something that you should know if you are going into the industry and starting to work somewhere, because serverless functions are like very useful in startup industries. So let's move into it. This session is going to be about Azure functions, everything you need to know to get started about it. My introduction has been already been given, like Ganesh Tiwari, computer science, masters, plus Python, Kotlin art. I play Minecraft a lot. You can connect me on Twitter over here, at LinkedIn over here. GET786 is like my tag name. You can find me with that tag name if you search on Google. And Dev is me on Instagram. So it's not very interesting, but I post sometimes over there. I am back again. This presentation is not that long. This is like 7 to 8 pages. You don't need to worry about that. And even in this 7 to 8 pages, we are already on the 3rd page. So keep chill. Okay, this is not going. I'm trying to not make this boring. Now, what is Azure Functions? Azure Functions is like an event-driven architecture for making your applications. Now, what do I mean by event-driven architecture? So, I can't see the chat over here. Is there a chat? Like, I would like to, see what people are talking about if it is possible. Okay, okay, awesome. I can see the chat now. Everyone in the room. So it will be really great if you guys can talk to me and say things about whatever I will ask about over here in the chat, so I can see like what your views are and if you have something to ask. So if you have some questions, go over there and message it. Okay. Now, like I will just type in a message over here. Let's see. And if you guys get it, just let me know. Okay, now let's start with the session. So how traditional applications work, like if you have built any application like which is deployed on the internet, how it is built is like you have a server on which you deploy some web application, and it is running for as soon as the server runs, until and unless you have physically stopped that server, it keeps on running over there, and you have to pay for the amount of time that your servers was on. uh, the cloud companies, they don't care about how much you have actually used those resource or not. Now this is where Azure Functions is different. Like, not Azure Functions, but all the serverless applications. Like how serverless works is like you have some amount of code, you deploy it to a serverless framework. It can be Azure Functions, it can be AWS Lambda or anything else. But what happens is when you deploy that code, it is deployed somewhere, and it only runs when a particular event happens, and you only pay when the event is being done, or every time the event runs. So this is where the main costing difference happens. So suppose if you are a startup and you have built some application, of course you can't uh, if you can invest that much money, then it's not a problem. But if you can't invest that much money, you can choose a serverless architecture, and what will happen is whenever you don't have any customers, you don't have to pay for anything. It's like free. And then when you start gaining some traction, when people start using your apps and the serverless things keeps running, that is when you will get the cost. Okay, so when someone opens your app, the code will run. That will cost that will cost you something. If you don't use it, it will not cost you anything. And for Azure Functions, you have like a million calls given to you for a free. So if you have some app, and the calls being used in it is less than a million per month, it is going to be free for you. So this is something that you should look on if you want to develop some applications for with limited amount of funding at the beginning of things. Okay, then you can move on to something else. uh, Now what do these event driven mean? Like, we talked about it, like when some event happens. Okay, now these events can be anything. Like when you open up your website, your browser hits an endpoint, like www.yourwebsite.com slash your application. When you hit that endpoint, the Azure function serverless code will run, and you will be cost for it. And now, similar to these resources, there are very different types of bindings. Now these are bindings. Like when I talk about, you're opening up a website, and there is a call going on, that is a HTTP trigger. So over here, if you can see, I don't know if you can see CTRLF4. Okay, so this thing, if you can see HTTP and webhooks, this will be called as uh, how do I exit it? Okay, CTRLF4 again. Okay, nice. So uh, when you hit an endpoint, it is called a HTTP request or a trigger. You can do it with blob storage. So with blob storage is like a storage for your files. If you have some files, you typically store it in blob storage. So as soon as you upload some file, or you delete some file, then you can do it. And then Cosmos DB is like your SQL server. So when you put an entry or you delete an entry, then you can call an Azure functions, or you can see like there are various different types of events that can happen. You can trigger it with anything. Like there is even an IoT hub. So if you are building some IoT application, you can connect it with IoT hub. So as soon as some event happens in your IoT hub, that code will be triggered. That is the same for SendGrid. If you know SendGrid, it is used to send messages, emails, and whatnot with it. So the same is with Twilio. Twilio is a very famous application which you can use to call this thing. Now that is it. Now these pages keep on rolling. Now how does it all work? Like you might be saying, wait, let me just give me a minute, okay? Just give me a minute. Okay, so I'm back. Now you might be wondering like how does it all work? But it is all open source. Like all of the things which you use with Azure functions, like if you build anything and you are using Azure functions in it, it is probably it's like open source. So you can go over at GitHub and search for Azure functions, and it will land you to this page, Azure/Azure functions. And this has all the code which which is used in this functions, like serverless architecture of Azure. The only thing which I think is not open sourced over here is like I guess the code which they use to scale things up and scale things down. That is the thing which is not open sourced over here. So, guys, are we recording this thing? I just needed to ask this thing.
Yes, it is being recorded and live on YouTube also.
Oh, awesome. So it's a great thing. Now, I just wanted to ask, like, I have to report these things. So, if it is recorded, then it is great. So, uh, other than that, like, yeah, the only thing which is not open source is like how you scale and downscale again these things. We will talk about scaling once again, like what do you mean by scaling? Okay, don't need to worry about that. I think you guys will understand that very easily. So now what's in the like it is always open source. We have talked about serverless. So yeah, let's talk about serverless. Like what is serverless? So serverless is uh, when you build something, like I said earlier, you have to deploy a server and then you need to take care of it. Like you have to install uh, different kinds of HTTP servers on it and everything. With this serverless execution model, you don't have to care about anything. Like you don't have to worry about spinning up a virtual machine. You don't have to worry about deploying it somewhere else. It's like you just write code, you deploy it to Azure serverless architecture, and that's it. Yeah, like when you are deploying, you have to just click once or twice. After that, Azure takes care of all of it. Like they take care of like when you are getting just one or two requests per minute, it will be just one instance running. When suppose if there are 100 people accessing your resource, they will automatically scale it to two or three resources that you would need. So you don't have to worry about scaling. That is what serverless means. And serverless is nothing but you care about servers less. Okay, it's not like you don't need servers, you care about them very less manner. It's like it's a new way of accessing and processing data. It has a wide variety of triggering options and a very robust developing environment. uh, at last, you can develop it in your favorite language. You can use C Sharp, you can use Java, you can use JavaScript. It's also possible to build a function in Python, PowerShell, or TypeScript. I think I may be missing some things over here. It is possible to build these things in various different types of languages, any language that you are comfortable with. Hey, it's demo time. So enough of talking. Let's show you guys some code. Let's go into some code. So the easiest way for you guys to build a serverless application or an Azure function is you have this Visual Studio Code installed. You go into extensions, you search for Azure functions. You see, you have to install that. I have it installed, so I don't need to worry about that. But you will need to install that. And after that, it's better if you have an Azure account with you as well, uh, to deploy it to Azure. Okay, those two things you need to have. Now, I don't know if this text is visible to you guys or not, but let's open some folder and do some code. So if I go to desktop and I create a new function uh, tutorial, and I just do select over here, and this will open up this folder in Visual Studio Code. And then let's see this thing. Okay, now just zoom into it. See, CTR plus. Okay, now it's good. Now it's big. I think so. You guys will be able to see this now. Okay. Now what I have to do is, like, when you have this thing open, when you have an empty folder, you do F1 and you search for Azure functions, create a function. Now when you do that, uh, it will say create new project. Yes. And you will have to choose your favorite type of language that you want to do. I will wait for a few seconds, and if you guys have some favorite language that you work with, you can put it in the comments, and we will develop for serverless app in that function, in that level, sorry, in that language. By the way, I am most comfortable with TypeScript, JavaScript, and Python. Go is not supported yet, Pratik. Python, I think, like, you know, it is a great option. As like everyone is now commenting Python. I guess that was a bad idea. Okay, no worries. So if you guys think like I have two answers for Python and one answer for Go, I think I should go for Python. Like for beginners purpose, we can just go with Python, and I can show you like how it works. So let's choose Python, and then we will have to choose a version for it. We will use uh, the top one, whichever comes first. And then, as you can see, we talked about triggers. We have to choose some kind of trigger from which our function code will run. Oh, sorry, I press escape. So create function. We'll choose Python. We will choose the latest thing. We will choose HTTP trigger. We will choose. We will keep it normal, and like this is the authorization level. So if I choose function level, I will have to give more authentication. And then if I do it like admin, then it is like the most uh, secure kind of a function. But let's not go into that. It's like a little complicated. Let's make it an anonymous one. It will not have any authentication. It will run automatically. And when I run this thing, it will automatically create a few files for me, and it will all be like, you can see that it is creating a virtual environment for me. And while it is doing that, I can show you a few files which actually make up this thing. So this host.json, it is used to build up that host file that we have. Proxies.json. Where is func.json? I think we have changed it. Wait, let's just wait for this to complete so that we have the whole set of files ready. Okay, yes, now we have everything ready. So these two things that you see over here, as you can see, this proxies is empty for now. This is for when you have functions set up in a, we chose like Python 3.8, right? So let's choose Python 3.8. Let's choose this. Okay. Now it will not probably give some errors. So, yeah, so you can see in this HTTP trigger file, there is init.py file. This is nothing but a file, if I import this module, this file will automatically run. So this is like a main file for any other language, that is init.py for Python. And we have this function.json file. You can see that it says that the script file is init.py. So it will automatically run this file. This has two bindings, like authorization level is anonymous, and the trigger is HTTP trigger. Like this is the trigger, so this is like coming in. And the trigger will be named as REQ, that is request. So if if you see this code in the main function, we have this REQ variable, which is like the input, which is what we put from here. Like whenever we make a request, this REQ variable will have all the context for it. And the methods that are supported are like get and post. And for output, this is again an HTTP output, and it will return the return variable, return statement. So that is this, like whatever we are returning with this. Now let's try to run this. And when I hit run, it will automatically install all the things which are necessary for it, and it will run. Okay, now port is not available. Maybe I am running something else over here. Let's see. Okay, yes, I think yeah, I am running another function. Let's minimize that and try it again. And press F5. This will run again. It is loading. Like earlier it installed everything that is needed to run this thing, and now it's running. So now I have this function running at this address. So if I go over at this address, HTTP trigger, you can see that I don't know if you are able to see. So now you should be able to see. Like HTTP trigger successfully pass a name for the response. Let's see, let's examine our code. What do we do in this code? Like you see that we get the parameter. If there is any parameter which is named, and if there is not a name parameter, we see if the body has a parameter, sorry, a body has any content, and if the body doesn't have any content, it will raise an error. We will just ignore that error, and if there is no error, then we will see if there is a name in that thing, and we do this to check whether the name is in parameter variable or in the body of it. So if you saw this function.json file, you can see that we are supporting two types of functions, like either HTTP get or either HTTP post. So when you do a get request, you usually pass in the parameters in the URL, like HTTP www.google.com question mark query equals to some query. Okay, and when you do a post request, you just do a URL, and whatever you want to post in, you post in as a body of that object. So that is why we are trying to do both of the things. If it is a get request, we are just getting it from the parameters. If it is a post request, we will get it from a body. So that is what we are doing over here. And then after doing both those things, if the name exists, we will say hello name and then print it. If the name doesn't exist, we will say the output that we just got. So this thing, now let's pass in a name. Okay, sorry for that. Let me just give this phone to my mom and be back. Okay. Okay, I'm back. So now we are in this page, and we are calling this variable. Sorry, we are calling this URL. Now, if I pass in some name, that like, let's pass in John. Okay, let's see. And hello, John. This triggered very exciting. Uh, let's pass in Saint John. You can see that Saint John was passed. Awesome. So we can do this without apostrophes with plus. Yeah, this is it. So this is like a normal function without anything. Now let's build that. I wanted to show you guys like a function which will return uh, what do you say, a quote. So I have this file over here, quotes.json file, and this has like thousands of quotes in it. So you can see that quote, don't cry because it's over, smile because it's happened. Like this, I have like, I don't know, many quotes, like I guess more than 10,000 or more than that. That many quotes I have over here. Now what I want to make is a function that will return a random, quote from the quotes.json whenever we call that function. Okay, let's try to make that thing and see if we can do that. So I will just slide that thing onto my next screen, and we will create a new function over here. And sorry for not using Python. It's just I have this thing ready with JavaScript, and I think I'll just use that so as to not make any cause any problems. Okay, so you can try the same thing with Python, and it will work. And you know, I just hope that you guys learn something from this and try to make something of your own from it. Okay. Pratik over here can help you out with some Azure credits if you guys ask him. So, and let's see, create function, create new project, go to desktop, create new quotes, quotes function, okay. Create new, select this, and we will open it in this. I will use JavaScript because I am more inclined to JavaScript, and then I use an HTTP trigger. I can name this anything, uh, but I'll just keep it HTTP trigger for now. I press enter. I'll used to use the least amount of authentication that is required. Open in this current window. As you can see, like JavaScript thing happened very fast because I was training on that and I was trying to build things in it. You guys were very interested in Python, so don't worry. Like, this is almost the same thing. If you see the functions.json, this is the same thing as from earlier. Like the same function, just the language has changed. Like right now we are using JavaScript, and earlier we were using Python. The rest of the things remain the same. Let's move on to the code. Let me just copy this codes.json file from my other folder to this folder so that we have it over here. Okay. Now we have this thing copied over here. Now we have this thing copied. Let's let's move on and write the code that is necessary to build this thing. So before doing all of that, let's see how this part of code runs. Okay, this actually runs. Okay, so to run this thing, I can do is earlier we did F5, but you can also run your functions with func start. Now for this you need to have Azure functions uh, command line interface installed, but you can Google it and install it on your machine, or from the repository which I have given. Like I have a detailed readme over there on how you can set that up. But after doing that, if you have the CLI installed, you can press func start and that will start the function. Sorry for that. My throat was getting a little bit dry. So now we have this function over here installed and up and running. So you can see that we had this earlier in Python. Now we have the same thing in JavaScript, and we go over here and we run this function without the query. And when we do this, it executes the same thing. Now we do it with a parameter name equals to same shown, and it will run the same thing. Now we have the same function ready in JavaScript. Let's and as we run these things, you can see that I get some written things over here in my terminal, like it processed a request. It took 200 milliseconds. It took 15 milliseconds. So you get this detailed output over here. If you read this, you will know more. Now let's stop this thing and write our code. So we have this codes.json file. Now to read from it, we will need to make a file which will read this JSON file and return a random, what do you say, code from it whenever we want to. So let's create a file like get code dot js, and in this function, sorry, in this file, what we will do is uh, first of all we will need to read that file. So we will get the oops, I can't do this for some reason. Const fs is equals to require fs. Okay, I don't think so it will work. Import fs from fs. I don't think so it's working. So I don't know why it's not working on me. Let's see. I don't have anything mentioned over here specifically for that. It just works. Okay, maybe this is because of it considering this as okay, let's try to run this fi and let's see what happens. Yeah, many a times what happens is when you have these node projects, you need to install all of the dependencies before you can do anything with it. Let's try and do this thing. So, I will have this thing running. I go to this URL and have this thing. This is working. The get code JS const fs is equals to require fs. Okay, now this fs is nothing but for file system library of JavaScript. So you can read files with this once you have it installed. Now we're just going to create a constructor which will, store this thing, get random number function. And this random number function will take maximum number, which will be like from 0 to how long do we want to get a maximum number, and then we will return a random number between 0 to that number. Now we have this random number function installed. Now we just need to read this file and return a random file, random code from that file. So we will load this file first of all. And for reading this file, we will need to have the address of that file. So let's copy uh, relative path, paste it over here, and let's convert this thing into JSON. To convert it into JSON, we do JSON.parse and pass in that binary file that we just read. After we have that JSON, we need to get a random number, and this random number function, we have this over here in it. We have to pass in the ports JSON dot length. Now, after we have passed it, we have a random number, we have the ports.json, and we return a random port. That is all of the code that is needed to, uh, get a random code from that codes.json file. Now we have that code. What we do is we go over here in our index.json, and first of all, we delete all of the code that is over here. We don't want any of those things. And we service handling the admittive const quotes lib is equals to require get code file. Like we are just importing that get code file over here. And after we have that file import, we want to have that uh, class that we have in it. So we have that class now, and we want to get a random code. And so we get code dot random code. So let's name it to codes. So just for clarity, dot get code, and once we have that code, we just return it as an output. So for returning that, we pass in the return type of that request as JSON, and that is application/JSON. It's getting pretty hot in here. Context show, and the response we will set it as it will be a 200 response. The body will be a random code, and then headers will be content type. Yeah, let's do it without. Yeah, I think the best way to set it is over here. Let's not do this. Slash. Have this thing set up. Let's try to run our code again. And this. Not this tab. This is not the tab. What is that URL? This thing. And over here, okay, I think we need to restart this file. And once we do, it should run. Oh, let me just restart this thing. Mhm. I think let's run this thing. Now you can see that it's returning random code like every time we hit. Awesome. Now once we have this thing set up, what we can do is deploy it to Azure. So how do we deploy it to Azure? Like, let's deploy it so that you guys can use it. And for that, what you need to do is you need to have this uh, Azure functions uh, extensions installed as well as an Azure account extension installed. When you have this Azure extension installed, what you have to do is get yourself signed in. So if you press S1 and you press FN and F1, you have this Azure sign in option. You click on that and it will open up a browser window and ask you to sign in. As soon as you are sign in, it will show up your name over here in the bottom. Like mine is GD76. So once you have that set up, you can go and say like Azure functions. You can see that I have everything installed: app service, functions, resource groups. But we need to have this functions open, and then we need to say create a new function app, and then we will type uh, codes serverless or anything that you want for your app to be called. You'll press enter, and now we can use any. I will just use the latest one, and I'll just reload this file. It was saying that I need to reload this, so I'll just reload this quickly. And once it is all set up, we will deploy this. Now it's done. I'll click on upload. I will need new roads serverless. Press enter, select any Node.js environment. We'll select the latest one for India. Uh, I'll select Southeast Asia, like that is the very nearest. It's like the nearest best Azure server from like it's like has multiple backup things in it. Like if you I would have chosen India, but India doesn't have that much big of a server farm. It's called something, a special kind of a server farm where they have backups. So for Southeast Asia's, they have backups. So if you deploy something to Southeast Asia, it is supposed to have backup, and it is like more better way for you to deploy there. The Southeast Asia is like the Singapore one servers. So it is now deploying, and once we have this thing deployed, I will ask you guys to hit that endpoint and try to make our function scale. So like at the very beginning, we will just have one pod running, but if you hit it multiple times, we can scale it to two pods, and it will show you like how the scaling happens in functions. So if this thing installs, deploys easily, and then I can show you. Okay, now I think the process of creation of a resource was done, and now the production execution task is done. Now it's doing the final deployment task. It's going to deploy this over here, like code serverless Azure websites.net. Normally what we do is we have this postman kind of a thing. We can use this postman to query these REST endpoints. I don't know if it's starting soon. It's starting. So the postman has started, and I have this and deploy. So if I open this functions thing, I have this code serverless. Inside that we should have the sample Azure functions. Hmm. Let's copy that function URL, hit it with this thing, and you can see that it is returning random codes. So we have this thing set up. Let me just go into Azure and set up an analytics for it. So if I go over here, refresh this page, see my resources, functions. I have this code serverless. No, no. So that application insights. Yes. So, uh, okay. No, it's not. Okay. Now I think this is it. Okay. go to diagnostic settings to configure data protection. Okay. Hmm, no, no, no. I think I need to just send you this URL so you can just check it out. Yeah, hit it and see whether it works. And then we'll just see like what happens. Serverless browse functions. Function. Yep, for understanding. Yep, this is it. So that's the chat. Chat. Okay. This is the URL. You can go ahead and try to execute this thing and see whether it works or not for you. So and for a session, I guess that is all I had in my mind for this session, like trying to make a function with you guys. And then we did a different bit of uh, function creation, in which we did it's like it returning a random port whenever you hit that endpoint. So if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, so let me know in the chat or in or whatever you want to have. Pratik, if you have something to add, uh, then so thank you for listening. I hope that this was a fun session for you and you got to learn something from it. And that's it. Are you guys there? Mm, Jayesh, Ritika.
Yes, sir. There is one of the questions from a participant.
Okay.
Um, it is, in which cloud module Azure function comes?
Okay. So that is a very interesting question. So, you know, types of cloud computing, we will have to delve into types of cloud computing uh, for me to answer this. Like, no, this is not types of cloud computing. Yeah, this cloud service models. Yeah, this is one which will explain your question. So different type of cloud service models exists. One is IaaS, that is infrastructure as a service. Then is PaaS, that is platform as a service. And then there is SaaS, that is software as a service. Now in IaaS is that you have the most amount of things that you need to worry about. You need to worry about everything, and you need to set up everything manually. A very good example of that would be a virtual machine. So you have to take care of how much RAM does it have, which operating system is running it, uh, what type of different applications are installed on it. This is an IaaS. IaaS service. Like VM is an IaaS service, and then you have PaaS, that is platform as a service. So if I don't know if you guys have used Heroku or Azure App Service. So what happens in that is you have your code and you have some environment in which you want to deploy this on, and you just worry about that. You don't worry about anything else. Like you don't care about which OS it is running on, or you know how many types of services which you have in, that is PaaS. And then the last one is SaaS, that is software as a service, in which comes all your Google Drive, your Gmail, your Microsoft Office. It's like you don't have to do anything. It is a software. It uses some cloud computing resources, and you just have to use it. And now this functions, Azure functions or serverless things, they come in between SaaS and PaaS. So some people call it as LAAS. Some people call it as what do you say? I forgot the term, but it comes in between these two things. Like it's not a server software as a service. Like it's not some software that you are using, but it's not a platform. Like uh, you're not given some platform for which you have to do something. So it is in between these two things. So I hope that answers your question. It is in between these two things.
I guess that was the only question, sir.
Okay.
Participants, if there are any more questions, you can put them into the chat box.
Yeah, that would be great if you have some questions.
Uh, I guess, sir, those was the only question left. So,
Okay, no worries.
yeah.
So
So, moving on with the webinar, uh, everything has to end at some point, and whether it is this webinar or something else, for the such a smooth conduction of this event, it took a lot of efforts. So let's just appreciate the efforts took by the members, uh, and thank everyone. Also, I would like to extend a very special thanks to our respected speaker. So thank you for having such a thought-provoking session and sharing such deep knowledge on our today's topic. So thank you, sir, on behalf of all the participants today present here.
yeah,
Also,
it
I
was
would
very
like to
great
thank,
talking. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
yes, thank
I
you.
don't want to interrupt. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So once again, thank you. Also, I would like to thank our participants for, giving their time into this webinar, listening to all of it, and for the lovely participation. So thank you once again. Also, I would like to add some few points. E-certificate will be provided to all of you through their respective mail. There is a feedback form, I'm so sorry, sent into the chat box. So make sure you fill it before you leave this session. And yeah, once again, it's a request to all the participants who are present into this meet to please kindly switch on their camera so that we can take a quick screenshot of it. Requesting everyone present in the meet to please switch on their camera.
Oh, it says like the host has stopped us from sharing the camera.
Okay, they can try now.
Yeah. I see some people over here.
Yes, Ritika, you can go ahead. We are done. Thank you.
Thank you, participants. Thank you once again, sir, for a lovely session.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Have a great day. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone. You can exit the meet.